Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
So how's your guys' week been?
Man, crazy.
For me, we're recording this the week of like the Memorial Day weekend has just passed.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of time off of work at the beginning of the week, and so that was kind of nice to catch up on chores and stuff.
It's amazing what that day off during the week actually gives you.
Now, I will say I did wake up, and because I didn't have anything to do, and I did the normal routine that I do at the end of the week, like my Friday, where I made some breakfast for myself and was tidying up the house or whatever, had the house to myself for a while. It felt like what a Friday would feel like for me. And so halfway through the day, I was like, wait, today's Monday. I got to go to work tomorrow. I was like, oh man. So yeah.
I like milestones.
All right.
And we've had a few here on the Retrospect podcast.
Yeah.
I remember when we were looking at, 500 downloads and we got excited, and then 1,000 downloads.
Right.
And now we're looking at 5,000 downloads. We're looking at our 100th episode popping up pretty soon.
I'm so excited about that, guys.
But we had a milestone on the last episode. I don't maybe milestone, but milestone is cool.
Yeah.
We had our first studio audience.
Oh gosh.
And I kind of really liked that. It was fun talking to people this week and saying, yes, we had a studio audience in the Retrospect podcast studio. And they were like, really? And I'm like, yes, it was kind of neat.
It's amazing how fast this podcast is just taking off.
Right.
I mean, it's so exciting. We have some exciting guests in the pipe, and we hope to even get even more interesting people to come and participate in our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be fun.
It is.
Yeah.
Exciting times ahead. I'm really excited about it.
It's really nice to sit down and kind of plan forward for what the next few episodes look like, or to potentially talk to people about guest spots on the show, and it just gets me a little more excited to see.
Well, remember when we were sitting down with X-Man, and we were like, this is the kind of direction we want to go. Did we really think it was going to do this? Did we really think it was going to just take off like it has?
I'm not going to say I wasn't realistic with myself. I'm optimistic, and I knew that we're doing some good things, and I know that we're all, pretty upright people, and I think we all got good things to say, and I feel like we're really scratching an itch for some people, and I'm really excited about that. And like I said, to look forward at what we have planned for the next few months is going to be really cool. So
yes,
I think
Exciting times.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
did I ever imagine it was going to get to this point this quickly? No. But was I hopeful? At least
sure.
At some point, it's I would hope that this show would do, pretty well.
yeah, the more people out there that are listening,
Right.
And it seems like they're
Keep
starting
us
to
in
share
the,
us. They're
share
starting.
us,
They're talking
talk-
about us. The conversation is growing. Apparently, the U.S. government was listening to the podcast, and 2 days later, after our AI podcast, they decided to start trying to look at some regulations for it. So even the U.S. government's listening to us.
Yeah, and look, and following in that vein, guess what? Just got another Yahoo article. CEO Arvind Krishna announced a hiring pause earlier this month, but the company plans to replace nearly 8,000 jobs with AI.
Oh gosh,
8,000? Yeah, 8,000. He noted that back office functions, specifically in the human resources sector, will be the first to face these changes. So,
wait, human resources are the first people to go?
Yes. And this goes this goes with what I've been seeing with a lot of your fast food sectors right now.
Right.
Are pretty much the only people that will be left are just the cooks and the person bringing the food from the cook to the window. And
I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to be able to robot that. I think the only person that's going to be there is the person who has to take it from the food truck, from the freezer truck, and put it in the freezer. That's what McDonald's said. They said that the only people we're going to have is 1 or 2, 3 people that are going to actually stock the things, and robots are going to cook it and assemble it.
And I'm going to tell you what we touched on this in that episode, but as AI advances, And as more and more low-skilled, I guess, labor, if you want to call it that,
right,
that gets replaced, what are these people going to do? You would think as AI continues to advance and gets more involved and, just can handle more and more complex tasks, that's more and more people being replaced.
Yeah.
So an issue that I'm going to throw in there that could be a topic for another future podcast is universal basic income.
Uh-oh.
How that works.
I just think it's so ironic that you were saying that the first people to go in that industry or whatever the company was human resources. So the people,
Yes.
so the people that are worried about like the well-being of humans are being fired and replaced with robots to do their job. It's like, how weird is that going to be?
Yeah, they said.
Well, I kind of like the irony of that a little bit because human resources is sitting there with the power of the button on who gets hired and who gets fired and everything else.
Exactly.
And so that's the irony. And in the AI episode, I did something kind of ironic there.
Right.
And now the irony of that has even presented itself again. The people who were sitting there going, well, I don't like this application or whatever their reason.
It all feeds back into your AI overlords.
Yes.
You should be nice to them now because they're going to be
Skynet's
coming.
It's
It's coming.
It just says here the transition will happen gradually over the next few years,
Wow.
with machines potentially taking up to 30% of non-customer facing roles in 5 years.
Wow.
This means that workers in finance, accounting, HR, and other areas will likely find themselves facing stiff competition from robots and algorithms.
Wow.
Well, that's what they do now. These companies that do the I don't say their names on there, but they do the hiring or the
Onboarding,
initial before that when the resume companies to put that out there, they're using AI, they're using algorithms to find keywords, how you word something. That's how your resume is getting put out there. And they say, oh, we guarantee somebody within 24 hours. Less and less people are actually sitting there looking at it. Right. And now apparently even less people, because it'll just put it through the computer and, oh, this person meets what we said, this person meets what we said. And that's how, even when you taught me when I started learning AI, the prompts, how you prompt something, how you do something, and even further on.
Right. And especially if you kind of talk it into a corner with a lot of these chat-based models, you can really push the AI model into its own way of thinking. And like you can tell it to think a certain way. You can kind of or you can say I'm offended by XYZ, so therefore don't talk about it or whatever. And you can really talk it into a corner and kind of force it into saying some things I don't think those chat models ever really intended to say. And of course, you take a screenshot of it out of context and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. It just said it unprompted. But it's but I'm pretty sure you did kind of really lock it into a certain mindset.
Yeah,
there.
like when I asked it if it believed in the 3 rules of robotics.
Right. Oh, gosh.
I wish I had a camera to see y'all's faces. So just take that picture and put it on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
Well,
because that was awesome.
Those hidden fears.
Yep.
The unknown. That.
Hey, why do you think Terminator was so popular? Because people are actually scared of the robots and AI taking over. This is a latent fear
for
that
good
people
reason.
have. And absolutely.
I think it will also play a role in nano robotics and really the shrinking of chips down to the subatomic level and stuff like that. I mean, that stuff is coming.
Crazy.
No, if it's not already here.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, it's probably in some lab somewhere. I've already discovered it. But
okay, then so how about this? How about this for a roll-in? We're talking about AI taking over and companies doing this and companies doing that. So how do you trust the company you're working for when you're there if they're not going to replace you? So I have a good question. How would you define trust and why is it crucial in our personal and professional lives?
Yep.
And that's the topic for today, trust.
That's a good one.
That's such a broad topic, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of research on this idea of trust. The difference between trust and trustfulness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what makes
it's one of those things like
trustful.
There's no like it's I don't want to say the word arbitrary, but it's like you can't really it's one of those like unquantifiable things. You can say like this person is conventionally attractive, or this person is mostly nice, or it's like, but what does that mean? Like on paper, it's like, this person's trustworthy. It's like, okay, like there are probably some quantifiable things, but like, like you're saying, trustfulness, like how do you, there's no like gauge for that.
There are definitions. I mean, right. I have a definition of trust.
But what I'm saying is like, you can't have like a meter of like, you're a level 10 and I'm only level 8 trustfulness. So, see what I'm saying? Like, whereas like someone is like, like that kind of thing where.
Right.
But anyway, continue with what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, the definition I saw, I mean, and there are plenty of them, but I said the trust is defined the belief that someone or something can be relied on to do what they say they will. It's a key element of social relationships and a foundation for cooperation. It is critical for romantic relationships, friendships, interactions between strangers, and social groups on a large scale. And a lack of trust in such scenarios can come with serious consequences. Indeed, society as a whole would likely fail to function in the absence of trust, right? Which you're starting to see some of that happening now.
but in that lies also, the Retrospect is a generational show. And I asked an interesting question about this, and I'll pose it to y'all. In your experience, how is trust involved over the different generations? Are there any notable differences or trends? Well, now in the age of disposability, which we talked about, and the cancel culture, what does trust mean today? If you can just write me off because I said something to offend you or I did something, back in my day, we were ugly to each other. If I didn't insult you, you knew I didn't care about you. But now you say something and done. So how do you develop that trust now in the age of the cancel culture? How do you build trust with anybody if you're not willing to put that time into it?
I think that they are. I think that that's kind of two sides of the same coin sort of thing. Like I think people are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt until they're not. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's just like you say one thing and of course I'm done. Some people may be like that. I don't think everyone's kind of like that, at least. I mean, but there are some people in my life I give at least a couple of chances to be like, hey, I want to hang out with you. I want to be friends with you. But if you're not going to be around, then I'm just not going to extend the invitation anymore. And the same sort of thing.
I think trust really started to take a hit in Generation X.
Okay.
I
especially in the business world,
right?
Because
I think
that's
with the corporate buyouts, the destruction of pensions, the idea of someone working for a company for 30, 35 years and retiring with a pension or
getting fired 6 weeks before they retire.
Exactly. That really, I hate to say it, that really started probably in the early 80s with Reagan coming in. It did have some serious consequences, and I think that kind of started the dominoes falling. And it really, the idea of loyalty, of caring for the place you work started to suffer. And unfortunately, it degraded during the years of my era, of Generation X. And I would point that from, people that were born between 1965 and 1980.
You would really put the strings on the cork board and like really start to like tie our episodes all in together.
Yeah.
I think community is another big thing.
Yes.
Like loss of community, the apps, like the more anonymity, I think is what more so.
Nobody knows their neighbors anymore.
Yeah, right, exactly. I never talk to my neighbor And I don't think he ever wants to talk to me.
You came home, you pulled up in your driveway or your carport or your garage, you closed it, and you went inside, and that was it.
Yeah, right. And I think there's a big thing with like now like community is so online based. There's no like physical community. I mean, I'm not gonna say there's no like I don't want to mean like there's a blanket term. There are places for community. There are people out there that are doing good things that are making that happen. But I think that's a big shift from what I see from like looking back from your guys' perspective or generations towards now. It's like I think that practicing trustfulness or practicing trusting in somebody or just being open in that regard. Like I feel like I was raised at a time where it was like, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to anyone because they could all be like crazy killers.
That's what I'm saying. Right. That really, Generation X was the last generation of that where people really kind of interacted with the community as children, coming home, playing, with the neighborhood kids or whatever the case may be. But as time went on, that started to disappear, and things then became organized, or you went somewhere to do those kind of things. It wasn't kind of it didn't organically happen the way I recall as a child.
Right.
It's a little bit more formalized now, and you're very selective about the people you kind of interact with, whereas it was more, as I say, it was more open.
To kind of add to your point, I was talking to a friend of my dad's, and he went to college like in the 80s or whatever, and he was like, I didn't own a car at the time, and I was going through college and was trying to get myself a good job, and he was like, so I would hitchhike to get back home. So he's like, a lot of times I'd walk or ride a bike or I would hitch a ride with a friend to school. But a lot of times I would just like hitchhike my way home. And I was like, you would just do that? And he's like, yeah. A lot of times people were just kind of chill with it and they were fine. And he's like, and of course I didn't get hurt, but obviously there were people that
it's kind of funny you brought that story up because the other day I was driving home from work and there was a guy hitchhiking.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to rain. And so I picked him up.
Yeah.
And he's sitting in the car with me, and we're driving. He tells me where he lives. And he said, I'm so thankful for you picking me up. And that was such a nice thing to do. But aren't you scared that I was a serial killer? And I looked at him, and I says, actually, to be honest with you, the odds of two of them being at the same vehicle at the same time are so small. Yeah. No, not really. Oddly enough, he didn't say anything for the rest of the trip.
It's actually kind of surprising. You just hop in my car and think you're going to be safe.
But you know what? That's part of it now. You can't trust anybody. I have relationships that I've built for a long time, and that trust is embedded. I know who I can count on. I know who I can't. But when I meet somebody new, based off of those relationships, I try to give somebody a little bit of trust. Okay, I'm going to trust you. Somebody has to break the ice first. I'm going to give you this, and then what you do with it is up to you.
Exactly.
And if you decide to take that and run with it and give me some back and we build it, great. Right. And that's really what happened with Miranda and I.
Yeah.
We met that night. And we both kind of looked at each other. We've had this conversation. Okay, you know what? This is I remember her sitting there in the little restaurant, kind of her leg crossed and her arms folded at me, looking at me going, I'm going to check this guy out here. But by the end of the night, we had put enough into it that we realized, I'm going to give this person a shot. I'm going to trust you this much now. And when we talked about it, we both did the same thing.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of fantastic to have somebody who felt the same way, who understood that. And let's try to trust and see what we do with it. Mm. And then over the last 2.5 years, going into the surgeries, I had my eye done. I'm blind. I have to trust her to get me from point A to point B. And then I'm doing it again the day this podcast drops.
Yeah.
At 6 a.m. when it drops, I'll be back in surgery having the other eye done.
Round 2.
And ding, ding, ding. Right. And it's just amazing. Even when, I had the brain surgery, I knew I could trust her. There wasn't a moment that I felt, well, something's going to happen. And I just knew I could trust her. And you two guys, there's trust there. Both for different reasons. One, Ian, I've known you since you was teeny tiny. And Jason, you and I have some things in our past that kind of solidify our friend because we see things differently than the rest of the world. And we've built on that. And that's fantastic to me to be able to build that with people that understand what true trust is. I think in these later generations, they don't understand what true trust is, or being able to count on somebody when the chips really hit the ground.
Well, I mean, to place trust in somebody, you're making yourself vulnerable.
Extremely vulnerable.
And you're opening yourself up to be hurt. I mean, that's just part of kind of opening yourself up to that level of of dependency on someone. And a lot of times they don't end good. And there's, I would venture to say that's why a lot of people don't trust a lot of people now, is because of bad relationships.
Well, it's on a day-to-day level. When you're driving down the road in my generation, you always left 2 car lengths between you and the car in front of you. Well, you can't do that anymore because you can't trust that some ding-dong is going to come in here and cut you off. So now you're a half a length of car behind somebody because, now you're driving differently. In the grocery store, you're having to watch your purse, your food in there or whatever. It's just a different lifestyle now because everybody wants something from you.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Well, people use you now.
Yes.
How can I get in, what advantage do I get by befriending this person?
Right.
I mean, it's
anybody who's ever gotten like a minor bit of fame or even fell into small money.
They flock into them if they think you have influence.
I found relatives I didn't even know existed. They're like, "Oh, hey," and I'm like, "Where did you come from?"
Can you imagine if you won the lottery?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
all of a sudden you asking for some money.
I can't even imagine what the pressure would be if you had won, some obscene amount of money.
Well, Miranda and I've actually had that conversation. What would be the first thing we did? First thing is turn off your cell phone.
Disappear.
Then go to the Verizon store, grab 2 more phones with 2 new numbers, and then go somewhere for 30 days and not discuss anything with anybody, nobody. Be gone. And then kind of come back a little bit and, decide how you're going to do that. But because who's going to come out of the woodwork? Everybody.
Like that's what I was saying. I'm not saying I wasn't famous or anything, but there was a point in time in my life where I was doing pretty well for myself. I was working hard, kept my head down, was making some good money, and of course I'd gotten in with some bands and stuff. And I had people, old friends, or I say old friends, acquaintances, or whoever you want to call them, or family members that I've never even heard of. They're like, "Oh man, it's been so long," and I was like, "Yeah, and where were you when I needed you most? You weren't there." So, anyways, just a little.
Well, look, some of this stuff that I pulled up are humans hardwired to trust others? Is that something that's ingrained in the human condition?
Well, I think in a way, because you're going to trust somebody that looks like you, that acts like you, that has the same mannerisms as you. There's a whole dark psychology of why we start trusting somebody right off the bat. And it's something that we're familiar with. Right. But as a whole, I don't think so.
I think that there is a natural instinct to want to be with people or I guess pets. You want companionship in some way. And I think that natural desire, I think, boils down to okay, I have to develop friendships. I have to probably open up and trust somebody in a way.
Yeah.
So there probably is like a give and take or something.
That's why you see so many people say, well, all I want is a dog, because I know the dog will be happy to see me when I come
Unconditional.
home.
Well, I've said this
Unconditionally.
before. I says, if you want to find on the podcast, if you want to find out who really loves you, put your wife and your dog in the trunk and open it up 4 hours later and see which one's really happy to see you.
So bad. Don't do that.
No, don't
Well,
do
yeah,
that.
that,
just a joke.
probably,
On
wouldn't,
behalf
that
of the
probably
retro-
wouldn't be a good one. It does say recent neuroscience research on the mechanisms of trust suggests that human brains are naturally prone to trusting others. In one study, brain regions associated with positive emotions and decision making lit up when someone trusted a close associate to play a game fairly, indicating that feelings of trust trigger social reward centers in the brain.
See?
Wow.
Like I told you, it's all sort of like natural instinct, some deep-seated
Was it
feeling.
like so there's a Pavlov's dog or
Yeah,
something? What was
right,
that
right,
experiment?
right.
So there's a lot of things on this.
I think to add to your point, for me at least, he's a new friend in my circle, and he has grown to be a really close friend of mine because I think that we're not identical, but we think a lot alike. And I realized that after having maybe 2 or 3 conversations that he thinks a lot like I do, or he tackles problems the same way I do. And so therefore I felt like I understood him a little bit better than I probably did other people. And so and I found that, like, we weren't finishing each other's sentences, but it was almost like I was like telling a story, and before I could really get to like the punchline of it, he's like, "Oh, I know exactly what you're gonna do," and I was like, "You're right." And so I think that really expedited our friendship in a way, because I think that we were able to connect on a I guess a personality level that, like, I just don't find every day.
I had prepared a question for this. And in the last episode, we heard Chief Murphy Paul and I talk about from the very first moment that we met, we had a connection. And so my question to y'all was going to be trust and intuition. Let's explore the intricate relationship between trust and intuition. When should we trust our gut instincts and exercise caution? So, when we talked about from the very first minute we met,
Right.
we had this connection. But what happens when you're meeting somebody and maybe you don't have that connection and something just isn't adding up? Or how does that relationship work? What do you think about that? Is trust completely intuition, or do you have to put a little time into it and see how it works out, or what?
I think it's a both and.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, why do we trust strangers? Because that's really what we're doing. I would think there is some research on this, and we trust strangers because we think there's going to be some mutual benefit by trusting them.
Right.
Because it does indicate I'm trying to open up to you. I'm trying to bridge. We don't know each other, but I'm trying to bridge that. And if we do that, we think that, okay, I will get this person's friendship, or at least their trust.
Right.
Or at least something out of the relationship.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's, these, there's so many other little things that come into play of this. And it is, what is the gut feeling? What is that?
Right.
I mean, how can we define that? Why do
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's hard to quantify like a feeling.
How do you understand what is the gut feeling? Right. We all know what it is.
Well, but it's like what I said before. You're looking at something. Your senses are there. You're aware of so many things, and a lot of this is partly evolution, part of what you've experienced in your life.
Right.
And you see this situation in front of you, and the little things in your brain, the little things going back and forth are saying something's wrong here. Something's not adding up. This person is doing this. They're looking away from you. They're holding their hands. They say if you're in an interview and you want to have a good interview with somebody, watch the interviewer and do like they do. Yeah. If they're folding their arms, fold your arms just like them. Sit the way they sit.
Right.
You know, if you see them kind of mess with their hair a little bit, like then, you know, a minute or so later, do the exact same thing that they're doing, because that's what people find comforting and trustworthy, is somebody that's acting like them.
But I think that with that, I think that there's also there's benefits in an opposite way. What you're talking about too is having your hands present has always been shown to be a little more trustworthy than if
that's
you're
what
hiding
shaking
your
hands came from. So you're showing that I don't have a weapon in my sleeve.
If you're meeting somebody for the first time and you're wanting to is keep your hands present. It's like I don't know why, I don't know what causes that, but that's one of those things that I've been told numerous times is you want to seem calm, confident, and you're not, like, there's no funny business.
What qualities makes a person trustworthy?
Being able to count on them when the chips are down.
That's true. I mean, there is some research on that. Basically, they found that trustworthy people, especially leaders, and we had one last week.
Yeah. Boy, did we.
Tend to be transparent in their decision-making and motivation.
Yep.
Listen to others' input and put the interest of others over their own self-interest. Which I think that's pretty.
Yep,
I would agree with that.
Okay. So,
really all right, good. Ian looks like he's getting engaged here.
So there is. I want to continue with that question, but I want to side tangent off of this for a second. There is. I worked at a very busy coffee shop for a number of years, and I've been a barista, and I was a shift supervisor for a long time. So I led a team of somewhere between 5 to 6 people, you know, on a morning shift sometimes. And one thing that I've realized is that the type of work that is, where it's fast paced and it's very particular, it definitely attracts a certain kind of person, and the person that stays there and keeps that job going is a certain kind of person as well that I kind of mesh with in a way. And I've realized that, like, the shared, I don't want to say trauma's too hard, the shared struggle of that job and that work environment, because it's like fast paced, it's busy, it is, you know, we got to keep going. It really established, like, friendships and, like, really strong bonds with people that I don't think I would have otherwise had if not given the circumstances that we were in. We were in some very stressful situations, and I'm still really close with numerous friends that I made throughout my tenure at that company. And we all will gather around and still regale with all these crazy stories, because it's obviously, you know, it's fun. It's a coffee shop. It's like any public any like kind of public service kind of job. There's like there's numerous stories you can tell. But I've realized that, like, being a leader to the team, but also, like, just being a friend to some of those people in those moments.
So shared experience builds that trust.
And what I'm saying is, like, it is also all those things that you're talking about. It's like being transparent with them, and also, like, making decisions and being, like, open about it, asking their input, and of course, you know, like, trusting on them that they're going to get their stuff done, because I have to get my stuff done, which is different. Like, a lot of times mine was like inventory management, money management, that kind of stuff. So, like, a lot of times I had to go do that stuff while, like, they had to go run the floor. So it was like it was all a big team, and I couldn't have done it without them. And so so many times it's like, I'm here for you. I got you. We're going to make it through this, even though, like, it seems, because especially during, like, the holiday season when it's really chilly around here, everyone wants a hot chocolate or a hot coffee, you know, so everyone, the Christmas season comes and everyone out the woodworks is there. And so a lot of times it gets really busy and really crazy, and it's nice to have, like, people there that are like, look at me in the face. we're going to make it through this. It's going to be okay. We're going to get a break. We're going to make this happen. I'm here for you. Call me if you need me, and like keep the truck rolling, you know.
I in my current job, I am a leader. I have people that work from, that I supervise.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people that anytime they can come talk to me, just whatever the case may be. And I love just to sit down and have conversations with people.
Right.
I want to know about their lives and their families and everything else. And, I want to be their friend. And because I believe that's the foundation for establishing that trust, that person can come to you and talk to you about some hard things. To me, if you can't do that, then you're really not going to be very much of a. You may have authority, but you really are not going to be able to accomplish much.
Not going to be an effective leader.
No, you're not. Right. So that to me, that's critical. But there is a difference between trust and trustfulness, and I was looking for this actually because I thought it was pretty good. To trust someone is allow oneself to become vulnerable to potential exploitation by that person. Trustworthiness, however, refers to the propensity to fulfill another's positive, implicit, or explicit expectations regarding a particular action.
Whoa.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It really is. So, good stuff there. But high levels of certain personality traits, including agreeable. I can't even speak right now. Agreeable. I'm having a hard time
agreeable?
saying Well, it's agreeableness.
Okay.
There it is. I got it out. Now I lost my place trying to talk. And conscientiousness consistently predict trustworthiness. Other personality characteristics also play a role. For instance, here's another term, guilt proneness.
Uh-oh.
There's another one. Or one's tendency to anticipate feeling guilt after wrongdoing.
Wow.
It's highly predictive of trustworthiness in many studies. So the idea that if someone feels they're always worried about messing up and disappointing someone, that's generally a strong sign that person can be trusted.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Believe it or not. Because it's showing that person actually cares about fulfilling your expectations of that individual.
Interesting.
Weird.
So, yeah, it's but that can also lead into another question. Is it possible to be too trusting?
Oh, yes. Yeah, pushover.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're
not everybody's worthy of trust.
Mallory and I were watching this like cooking show or whatever, and one of the not characters, one of the participants, whatever you want to call it, the way the grading worked is it was based off of like your peers. So a lot of times it was not only how good your dish was, but it also was kind of like how much like the people liked you in a way. And so, but the way she kept talking about it is like she kept referencing how she would vote, and it wasn't based off of their performance. It was based off of like how much she liked them or didn't like them, and how much she was willing to stab them in the back. And so she was constantly worried about how she was going to get voted because she was looking through that lens of that's how I would treat everyone, is like to backstab them immediately. Whereas if you listen to the discussions of all the other contestants, they were all like really just there to like be in a competition, be up against the best, and really just like knock out everyone else that literally had a bad food item. So, it was the opposite of what she was worried about. Right. She was sitting here was so meticulously in her mind, oh my gosh, they're just going to out me because they don't like me or whatever. And it's like, that's not the way they're thinking at all.
So should you bring in artificial intelligence to take out that human emotion and just let the AI go ahead and do the judging from now on?
There is no.
Now you're reducing everything to logic.
I really don't see the benefit in AI.
I know. We know how you feel about AI.
I know. Anyways, we don't got to get into that discussion.
Well, there is, believe it or not, for people who do trust when they shouldn't trust.
You're right.
Even when the signs are there,
you're right,
but they still trust. There's actually a syndrome for that.
Interesting.
It's called Williams syndrome.
Really?
It's a rare disorder, sometimes called the opposite of autism.
Wait, what?
That's what it is. It's
never
called
heard
Williams syndrome. It's a rare disorder, sometimes called the opposite of autism.
Mm.
And it leads those who live with it to treat everyone, even strangers, as trustworthy, which can lead to negative consequences.
Oh, of course. If you're trusting everyone, that's
So, yeah, there
large
are
pool.
people that, for lack of a better term, they can't help themselves.
Right.
It's just the way their brains are wired.
Right.
You know, it's sort of like a baby. You think about it, when a baby
Yes.
comes into this world, it doesn't know.
Simple
It's
needs.
simple.
Yeah.
It ultimately trusts. It's as life goes on that kind of creates those hard edges in us.
Right.
The disappointments, the betrayals,
Right.
the
Well, but
you
also
know,
the independence. Like, there's a level of, like, at a certain point in time, you got to fly the coop in a way. And that for better or for worse, but that's, it's kind of the circle of life, if you will. Is like, you got to, you become solely independent. That's all or solely dependent. Sorry, until you eventually can be self-sustaining. Hopefully, I mean, that's the hope. Obviously, there's, what's the word? I can't think of it. There's, not everything is. It's all on a spectrum. There's not one way of doing it, but that's, the normal.
and a lot of people have experienced a lot of trauma in their life, and that trauma can hurt you. I mean,
Right.
psychologically, it just.
But it can also, I think, shape you and hopefully grow you in a way.
How that's channeled, I think, is the key, because
when you use the word trauma, it's long.
Yeah, because trauma, negative events in a person's life can either be channeled negatively or positively, and people who maybe take that and use that in a positive direction, yes, you can become a better human being.
Right.
People who to take it into a negative light, it can lead to antisocial behavior,
Right.
Not trusting anyone, and ultimately, living a very lonely life.
Well, one of the things from my generation is when you broke a trust, there always seemed to be a path of redemption. There was always something that you could do to garner somebody's trust again. But in today's society, once that trust is broken, it seems to cut you off. I'm done with you. That's it. It's over. I mean, look at some of the things that are happening with some of the business who are taking sides in political and other things. It's ridiculous, and it's part of the cancel culture. But I remember one time when I was, I think, in high school, I did something not intentional to a friend, but I broke a trust, and there was a way. And we're still friends today. There was a way back to redemption. Well, what are some things that people can do maybe to earn that trust back in a society full of cancel culture and just cutting you off?
I mean, right now, what's in the news? I mean, with Anheuser-Busch and and then Target. For many customers, the direction these two companies have chosen to take with certain social issues,
they've broken the trust.
They have broken that in trust, that people felt like, I understood this company. This company, kind of thought a certain way about life, and now you're kind of going out of your way to kind of identify a small group of people, and you're making this as a kind of a central theme of your business now, and that's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way.
My question is what can you do aside from all of that? Because I don't want to get into the ugliness of all that. What can they do or people do to get that trust back?
I think that the hard part is I don't think anybody understands like forgiveness at any like just
forgiveness.
But to me, the easiest thing to do is to just simply not go there at all and just be. Right. I'm a business. We're
talking about human beings. Okay,
yeah.
The business. Right. I don't.
But they're
that's
people.
A hard direction.
But they're people.
But they're also people who get funding from somebody, and I think they're being pushed into this direction by the funding that they get. These people aren't doing this other than their funding, and this may be another podcast. But I read this really big article about these companies that are making these decisions. It's based off of the 1% who provides their funding, saying if you don't do this, we're cutting your funding.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
Okay. So I don't want to touch that. I want to touch on if I hurt your feelings, if I do something to offend Jason, do I have a path of redemption to gain your trust back, or are you just going to cut me completely off?
That's what I'm saying is that the thing is that if we're talking about this hypothetical scenario, I feel like people don't fully understand the idea of like forgiving someone.
Right.
Is it like is looking at them and saying, I forgive you.
I forgive you, but I'll never forget it.
Really? And that's not, and for me, that's not true forgiveness. So we're talking about forgiveness here. We're talking about like, moving past something and like being the bigger person here.
I think you can forgive, and I'm a firm believer that you can forgive. You would be a fool, depending on what happened.
Of course.
Right. I mean, think about it in a marriage.
You're right.
Someone cheats on one or the other. Right. There's a huge breach of that trust. Could that marriage be repaired? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I've seen that happen.
But certain things have to happen.
But certain things has to happen. So I would say, yes, I can forgive you for what you've done to me.
Right.
At the same time, the memory doesn't go away.
Right, and
it just doesn't go away.
I had some friends that he cheated, and she supposedly forgave him, and the marriage somewhat survived. But every time he did something, she was on his 1 yard line. Remember when you did this? Remember when you did this? You were doing that the last time. And she never really forgot. And she used everything as a weapon against him. Now, they're not together anymore.
Right.
Because she truly did not forgive him.
That's the difference.
And that's what I was
saying. In
that
case, she really didn't forgive him.
And that's what I'm saying. When we're talking about scenarios like that, when we're talking about something as heinous as like abuse stuff or whatever, it's like there's a level of like, yes, you can forgive. And I understand that you never will probably forget those memories or those feelings, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you can't forgive somebody fully because you still remember those things. But what I'm meaning is like that the act of it, like he was saying, is like if you keep bringing it up and you keep holding it over that person's head, then you haven't forgiven them at all because you haven't really fully let it go. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. I feel like with all that.
I've got a note here in doing this. How can a couple regain trust after infidelity? Mm-hmm. And it goes in. I mean, partners can regain trust after infidelity through a process of rigorous honesty from both parties and through the slow, deliberative demonstration that the trust breaker is sorry, has taken responsibility for their actions, and can be counted on going forward.
And I think it goes back to a little bit about the leadership thing you talked about a second ago, like a supervisor or a boss is like being transparent with somebody, being open to them about, like your feelings or your thoughts or whatever it may be, There is a path of redemption, but both parties have to be honest at play. You have to be honest about being sorry about what you did, but at the same time, the other person has to be honest about like, I still possibly a little bit hurt by this, and I can't fully forgive you,
Right. But then it comes down to trust too.
Right.
So I'm going to have to start giving you trust even though you cheated.
Right.
But then you're going to have to trust, I'm going to have to trust you then that your process to get over this is going to, come forward too, because some people can't trust that process. And like this friend here didn't didn't process it, didn't eventually truly trust. So it becomes, again, you have to start trusting again. That's what this episode is about. The only way to get that path of redemption is to start putting out a little trust, earning that trust back, taking baby steps even sometimes to where we can trust each other again. And that trust goes both ways. And I think that's the only way for the redemption.
I have said this probably numerous times on this podcast, and I'll say it again because I feel like I need to hear it, and I feel like people need to hear it as well. Is that, yes, forgiving someone that has probably wronged you or betrayed you, whatever it may be, but at the same time is being able to be honest with yourself if you're wrong. Because sometimes you may be wrong and you can't admit it. And so then at that point, it's not just like your trust of the person or your relationship with the person or you forgiving that person, but it's you being honest with yourself to be able to move forward to make that situation better or that relationship better or whatever it may be. Because that's, like I've said numerous times, that's been a big thing for me. It's like sometimes I feel like I know what's best, but I have to look at myself and go, no, you were wrong, and that's okay. You are allowed to be wrong. That's fine, but don't ruin a relationship or a friendship because you have to be right all the time.
Well, there's a saying in marriage, and it's kind of funny that you have to ask yourself a question basically every day: do I want to be right, or do I want to be married?
I've heard that.
Right.
I've heard that, and as the single guy in the podcast, of course I think a certain way about those kind of things, but I'm allowed to think that way.
Right.
I'm kind of going back and forth with that, and
I'm not. I'm not meaning that. I'm not meaning.
I think people look at different issues in different ways.
You're right.
And I think they come with whatever life experiences they bring to the table,
of course, into
a relationship. And so their view is skewed by whatever that may be. So yeah, I think it comes down to love and respect and all these other things that where are there some things that are wrong and right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if
but as Chief Paul said the other day, the decisions are that are black and white are real easy, but there's a lot of gray in this world. There's a lot of gray,
and life is very complex.
And one of the mechanisms, the coping mechanisms that we have, is the insight of trust. And things like that. I mean, what's the old saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
And so he was really good. Chief Paul said when he said that, it brought a lot to my heart back, saying there's so much gray in this world. How much are we going to forgive people? Because we have to have grace and forgiveness.
No doubt.
We have to have it, but we have to give it. And then we have to be able to receive it too. Yeah. And the biggest person sometimes that we have the hardest time giving grace and forgiveness to is ourselves.
Yep.
Why are we so hard on ourselves?
And I don't.
What is that?
I don't know. But that's what I was meaning as well. Is being able to admit that you're wrong sometimes can be freeing in that same way of like also taking it easy on yourself because you're a little hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, like I said, there's a few times for me, and I may be only talking to myself here, but there's been a few times where I feel like I feel like I know that I'm right, but sometimes it's okay just to step back and just, that's not the most important part here. That's not the most important thing here.
The thing to think about.
Or sometimes if I'm doubling down and I feel like I know that I'm right, but come to find out I'm actually wrong, and then it's like.
But how about if you're right and the other situation is right too? Because
exactly.
4 + 4 = 8. Well, guess what? So does 6 + 2 and 7 + 1.
Right.
And, there's so many ways to get to the same answer.
Right.
Maybe you are right, and maybe the other person is right too. But how you get there is when you start putting those things together and work as a cohesive team.
Right.
Then being right isn't always what's important. Getting to the desired result then becomes important. I remember back in my private sector protective service days, I had a team. I was the leader of that team. I owned the business.
Right.
And when you had to get to a goal, There's the goal.
Right.
You have this team, and everybody has all of these different experiences. And when you're protecting somebody, you build the best team possible. You have military, you have former police officers, you have people from different aspects of life.
Right.
And you pull those things together. Each one of those people was so good, they could have come up with one solution on their own to attain that goal. But when you put those things together and then you start, and you walk through it, you give your idea and we're going to play naysayers and we're going to get through it. Then the next person, and you start building that together. That's when everybody is kind of right.
Right.
And everybody's kind of wrong. But then you put it together, and this is where trust comes, because now everybody's hearing the sides, and we put it together. And as a team, we do that in this podcast.
Yeah.
Not as big as going to try to save a life or what, Chief Paul and his team, do on a day, the amazing men and women of the Baton Rouge Police Department do every day. But we do that here too. We try to put together something. We each have different skill sets, and we work together and we build that trust. That's how trust is built, on a day-to-day basis, every day, and just looking at each other going, we have that goal in sight.
Right.
How are we going to get there?
Well, you're trusting your people.
That's right.
Yep. You're putting there and going, listen, I'm making myself vulnerable as the leader of this company. It's really, I have all the chips on the table.
Yeah.
And if it fails, I lose everything. If it succeeds, then we all succeed.
Well, the bottom line to this is when we had that goal, number one, you had to take care of the client and what they were doing, but you wanted all of your people alive at coming out of the end of it too.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
So
I mean, even on a much smaller scale than what you're talking about, it's like there's a number of times where like I would take the flack for upset customers or mess ups or whatever, and it's like that I would take the blame for that, and I would shield the rest of the team from it, because I was like, I mean, we're all doing our best here, and if I need to take care of it, then I'll go ahead and take care of it, because I know that I can handle this scenario. And
that's a good leader, taking the blame and giving the credit.
That's great leadership quality.
Right. Yes, taking the blame as the leader and giving the credit.
Right.
I'm not gonna take the credit for that. My team did that wonderful thing right there. Oh, there was a mistake. Oh, that's on me. I got that.
Right.
Chief Paul said that a number of times in our episode. Just being good leaders in everything that we do. Everything that we do
makes it. It also makes it so.
Are we going to reference that wonderful episode?
Probably.
Hopefully, a lot over the next year.
It
right?
also it makes it easier to surround yourself with people that are good at what they do, or that are good at a certain avenue. So that way you can just trust in that person to get their job done. Because I'm currently with a team right now that does that, where the boss has given me my avenue to work in, and he's like, I trust you to get that work done and do it in a great way.
I mean, right now I'm going through some training. I'm away from the office right now, and I have someone back there, and I know he's going to take care of business.
Love it.
So I trust him to accomplish what needs to be done. Absolutely no doubt.
Yeah,
everything will be just fine when I get back.
That's awesome.
So.
That's awesome.
It's great to have people like that in your workplace. You're like, I'm glad you got my back.
You have to have that.
Oh,
I mean, if you don't have that in the workplace, then
it's hard.
That's a miserable environment.
And in the family.
And
in the community.
Yeah. I mean, you can say a lot of our ills right now are because we just don't trust anything. Nobody trusts the government to do anything.
Can't trust the media.
Can't trust the media.
Companies.
Is the information coming out correct? No, it's been proven, this has been wrong, this has been wrong. You don't know is there truth probably in there? Of course.
Right.
The problem is it gets so colored with all the falsehoods.
Right.
It makes it difficult to kind of see what you need to see through all the other stuff going on. So, I mean, we do, and unfortunately, we have a trust crisis right now in our country, and we see it every day played out.
Yeah,
and communities are divided, and it's just everybody wants to kind of live in their little sector, and I don't want to be involved with anything else. And unfortunately, it's destroyed our civic life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, just the people that do not even show up to vote.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that.
That's a lot.
In their mind, they basically have just completely written off any involvement in the civic life.
Yeah.
Because they feel like, well, nothing matters. I don't trust them to do the right thing.
Right.
How many times have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, we're in a mess right now, and I don't know how you come out of that, because I don't know, somebody eventually has got to kind of take the hit and say, you know, I'm going to put myself out there and say, you know what, I'm going to trust you to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, whoever that person is that's in authority or whatever it might be actually does and fulfills the obligation that the person is laying on that person's
I think
feet.
we should just go ahead and trust AI to do the right thing and let it handle it. Let it take it over.
It actually may do that. We might not like the outcome.
I swear, Stoney's going to be the sole reason why we're going to go. The AI overlord's going to take over all of us.
Skynet.
I wouldn't be surprised if Stoney just phones in his position on the podcast AI. He's like, don't even worry about it. I'm going to get AI just to do my part.
I shouldn't have brought up the IBM thing earlier. It's just dominating everything.
I think it's fine. I think that's
hopefully next episode I won't have anything bad to say about AI or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but it seems like it's in the news a lot. So
of course,
so it comes up.
It's like we even said in that episode. It's been over the course of 6 months. It just has grown exponentially to this scary thing that we're.
Can we trust AI?
Right. I don't want to talk about it right now. But
Ian, that's what we're doing.
But there is some news about important people, getting worried about how fast AI is and trying to start pushing for regulations now. And I was like, so who was right over here? All of a sudden we're moving too fast, and everyone's wanting to go start buckling down now and regulating things, because now they're starting to realize, like, we're kind of in a pickle right now. And it's like,
look, I mean, because we seem to have a problem trusting our fellow human beings.
There you go.
Maybe at least I'll trust the machine.
Do you want to know something crazy? Is it some of the chat model people? I don't think it's ChatGPT specifically, but one of them out there, I don't know any specific names, the people that started with like the skeleton of the AI and like got all the coding all worked out for it and let it go, returned back, I'm pretty sure like a month or so later, to try and like look in the code to try and like work on it or look at it or see. And they were like, and it has far exceeded their understanding of like how it's operating. So the people that created it are now, the AI that these people created is now far enough advanced past the people that even created it that like they can't even figure out how it's doing what it's doing, or why it's like how the coding of it all works.
Probably has something to do with just the inherent laws of, I don't know what kind of governs electronics. Right. I mean, I'm thinking, like you've heard of Moore's law.
Yeah.
What, how the dyes get, transistors get.
Yes.
More and more and tiny.
I mean, to go ahead and shout out, we're already kind of at the end anyways, is to go ahead and shout out what we just recently got, is that there is this cool card that we got. For anyone out there, you can go to dot.com/retrospectpod, and you should be able to find all of our links there now. We got this cool card. It's about the size of a credit card, and it has an RFID chip in it. And these are the same chips that are in your credit card. These are the same chips that are in, in key fobs for doors, for your hotel rooms. It's all the same sort of stuff. So yeah, you're right. These chips are getting real small, and even people are going as crazy as to like implanting them in their hand, and they can make the RFID chip whatever they want it to be. So they can like, I guess, code it to a certain door, and they can just get into like hotel rooms or whatever. So there's all kind of stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. So, but this is we got a cool card now.
So can we trust AI.
No, absolutely not. But Stoney is feeding it so much information, we may as well. I'm kidding. I'm playing around. I'm joking. But anyway, is there anything else you guys want to talk about as far as trust?
I thought this was a pretty interesting topic, actually. I mean, because it is a very broad, because, trust is such a, it applies to so many different facets of life. And you can have podcasts on...
Right.
Trust in a workplace, trust in relationships.
I was just going to say, we could do a whole season on just trust.
Exactly.
What was that first question you started off the podcast with? You started off with like
how do you define trust, and why is it crucial in our personal and professional lives?
That's a good one. How do you define trust?
Well, I mean, I've read y'all that definition of at least. I mean, there's a lot of different definitions, but I mean,
right. But I guess in your own personal life,
it's just. I mean,
for me, it's about sharing. About sharing in life, like sharing the stories of life, being able to open up and be transparent. I'm a big proponent of like getting to like the deeper conversation. Like I'm okay with surface level conversation, but I'm all about just like really getting to know somebody, really asking those questions about opening up, and like, because I love talking about myself in that way, and I love hearing what people have to say about themselves. And I feel like that's a big thing about trust, is if we can sit down and have a good conversation, we can both open up about each other and who we are. You
brought that up when you asked last week.
Right,
with Chief Paul.
Right. Well, because
you wanted to get to know him a little bit more about
right.
himself. You asked that question.
Right. Well, because I never met the guy before,
right.
and he seemed like a really great person.
Yeah.
And we had this amazing hour-long conversation. And I was like, I really don't feel like I know this person. And I always love that.
For me, trust is always going to be, can I share my innermost secrets with this person? And that person not betray me.
Right.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
It really is. Because I'm somewhat of a guarded individual.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's trust. And there's a handful of people that I feel comfortable that I can just bare my soul to and know that person's got my back.
So basically you trust all the listeners of the Retrospect podcast then, because we bare our souls pretty good here on here, don't we?
You'd be surprised. A lot of people out there probably saying, God, look at these guys talking.
Right.
I mean,
what is
laying it all out
what
there.
What is that, parasocial relationship?
Yeah, everybody, I'm just laying my soul out there.
You know me very well. I don't know you very well, though.
Right.
So I'm all about it. You can come say, hey, you can talk to me, but a lot of times...
Leave us some message.
Right.
Leave us some comments.
Like I said before,
Facebook.
we have, if you want to, we go to dot.com/retrospectpod, and that's a new place for all of our links and stuff like that. Or you can go to the Facebook page /retrospectpod too and leave us a comment. But on that dot, we have all of our links, our Facebook stuff. It's got all of it. So if you ever looking for all of the links, it's going to be there. But anyways, until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
You're the best. Peace.